this deck of cards is the perfect ascending order. It's Isuke no
はいはい。
The question
朝までお休
is,
み
how
だ
many
ね。
times would I have to shuffle this deck of cards till I got a shuffle which is truly red? Possible to pick deck
はあ
cards.
はあ。さて、もう一眠り。
And 52 factorial of it is an red. Can you imagine for every single
らっしゃい。 おや、
there was a
何を
random
それじゃ聞かせてくれる？
Every person on that planet was shuffling 1 second and then doing that since the beginning of the Big Bang.
それでね。いやー、ありがとう。どうするのかな？しっかりね。
Now with this deck, it's only shuffle once. Let's take a look at what I notice is that I have 2 different ascending sequences. In spades, there's a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In diamonds, there's an ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what my shuffle
なんだっけ？
is the original deck that was in a ascending.
いってらっしゃい。
So what my shuffle is taken the original deck that was in a perfect ascending.
さて、
Merged it together in such a way that I have 2 different ascending sequences 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, occurring interleaved amongst themselves 2 and 4. Because we include random every possible sequence partial. Like what I'm showing is a shuffle. The only possible outcome we get are those in which there are precisely 2 rising sequences. When you think about how factorial is, you might think to make this truly random, such as the probability of every possible configuration.
よろしくお願いするです。
That taken for example, that is it you only
お
step
ー。
between pretty close random. A staggeringly small number compared to how that. Let's understand what shuffles do to just 10 cards to make it here. I put them here in ascending. Now, a shuffle has 2 I'll give it 1 ace through 6 and then 7. And then after I cut it, I have to interweave them together via the shuffling and get something. And again, the key to notice here is that the 1 ascending sequence of cards after a shuffle has become 2 ascending sequences. So have that 7, 8, 9, 10. They're not directly beside each other. They are all. That's what I consider a rising sequence. And ace 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to shuffle the second time. Again, I'm going to divide them into 2 piles via the pattern. I'm now color coding 4 colors. Each of the 2 piles themselves have sequences doesn't like that pattern. And then when I interleave those together, this is going to give me the 10 cards into 1 rising sequences. So for example, the 7, 8, 9, 10 is sequence 7, 8, 9, 10 is shuffle it to shuffle it in again. There's another way of this that's actually quite math. What can we do with all of it? Shuffle, this takes the cards and split. Like, also imagine the same exact idea, but what instead I'm going to do is take the original deck and break it up into 4 different piles. And I'm going to answer this. You can imagine 2 people taking their piles and all trying to mix them, shuffle them. So if I start with the original piece and break it up into 4 piles, I can get something like this here. That I will call a shuffle.
大丈夫ですか？暴れるの我が技よ。
You'll notice that I have this 7, 8, 9, 10. And I started with those in different packets, so they got different. You'll notice by this particular quirk of the shuffle, the 7, 8, 9, 10 actually just forms 1 rising sequence. doing a two shuffle twice is going to lead to at most rising sequences. There could be coincidences like this one where they line up and actually own 3 rising sequences. Start with rising sequence, shuffle twice is at most rising sequences. Sometimes.
I remember now.
Similarly, if one of your cuts was like similarly, if you imagine a terrible cut okay, into all the cards in one pack and done in the other, I can't allow that as a shuffle, but it was one like I've been focusing on rises. But I tried to shuffle the cards into this sequence. They're now descending 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 7, 2, and 8. The reason about this is I will say that there are 10 rising sequences in this configuration. Now, what was that number like 7?
我を呼ぶ声がする
7. It is not to the right of 7. So 7 is like a rising sequence of like what? 7 and then there is no pause. There's nothing.
はいです
Particular shuffle that's descending. It looks funny because it had lots of rising sequences. Just all the rising sequences consist of only a single pause. So that's the question. I started with the ace and the
強くなれたの
how many shuffles do I have to do in order to get this thing? 10 rising sequences. And instead, you do 1 normal 2 shuffle, you get 2 rising sequences. 2 normal shuffles, then you get 4.
そう
3, you get 8. This means you need 4 shuffles to make this even. If I take 2
勝てそうです
and 2 to the power of 3, 8 that's if I take 2 cards, that's going to be 6 full shuffles. 2 to the 5 is only 32, and I would never get that descent sequence possible. I need to do a 6 shuffle, so I have 2 to the 6 possible rising sequences. That is slightly bigger. So, you want to I want to be able to shuffle the cards so that I get to every possibility. Then I have to at minimum shuffle it 6 times. If I shuffle less than 6 times, there's going to be configurations of the deck that are just impossible to pattern out beyond that if I shuffle this. So you don't have just because every configuration is possible, it is really likely. That's what we turn to next. The big craziness of this video is that 6 shuffles is needed to make them all possible, but in a very useful sense, if I just do a single shuffle or 7 shuffle, it's going to make them all close enough to equally likely to occur that I would draw back the same shuffle 7 times. So, now when you talk about probabilities as opposed to just regular shuffle, to do this, I need to introduce a model mathematically of what it means
任せるです
to create a model.
意外ですよ
It's strictly determined to actually be a really
やっと最後
good
に
model for optimal, the real. Let's imagine undoing a shuffle. Let's imagine a shuffle. I'm trying to undo that. The bottom part, they're sort of equally likely to have come back.
我が道を阻むものなどない
Then the
珍
second
しいのを
card
見
again.
つけたですね
I keep there's always this thing. I go over and one of these tiles has, let's say, K cards, the other has, well, minus K cards, and then 52. Okay, so how big are these tiles? Well, let's say
何かあるです
if I flip the coin 2 times and ask how many times this one hits. This in mathematics refers to as the fight. When you write it down, it's me saying 52 shades K, and it has definitions back to the I just divide out definitions. And then I'll divide out by the total possible shuffles here. This leaves me with 2. This gives me a probability distribution of particular cut size possible. And the distribution looks something like this. Like, cut it into 2 tiles of exactly 26.
皆さんなら楽勝です
And you can sort of see that the binomial distribution is all surrounded nearby. every once in a while you get a really bad cut, like 2 cards in one pile, cards in the other pile. That's even error. Nonetheless, this distribution that I think should be fun. The second for the base model, after you do your cuts, then you're trying to do the cycle. And if at any point you have piles of size A and B remaining, the A over B is let's use this model, in particular this idea that all cases and then shuffle are equally likely to try to figure out some probabilities when it comes to shuffles. Let me actually go a little shorter. I'm going to start with the descending order. These 4, 2, 3. So try to think, like, what are all of the things that I can shuffle? If I color coded here, I notice that I have 2 rises. If I wanted to go ace and then the only way I could do this is if I cut in between the 3 and the 4. And these 2 rising sequence 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have to cut in between it so that I could have the opportunity for shuffle. And so this particular outcome only occurs this one way. What if instead of a 2 shuffle where I divided I did a 3 shuffle where I divided 3 different packets that I did? Okay. So the way I want you to imagine this is I'm going to take my ace 4 off. I'm going to color it. 2 colors. Something like this. It's still equal to 5. I'm going to imagine it comes 3 colors. I've got ace in the 2 blue, the 3 is going to be green, and then the 5 yellow. And color the same thing is the ace is going to be its own color, then the 2 and 3 is second color, then the 4 and 5 is different color. So if I just step off the screen to make a bit of space, there's actually 6 ways to do this. 6 ways that I can keep 3 colors and color code in 4, 2, 3, 5, 2. Some of these images have colors. Others only have 2 colors, and when you do that, you can imagine that the color is just random. So, for example, this scenario where I got I'm cutting this into 3 piles. I have these 2. Then I'm going to cut and start with this 3rd pile, the green pile that only has. And then I always had to cut between the 3 and the 4. That was the rule, of course. Then these 2, 3, and then 4, 5. I always had to cut between the 3 and the 4. But I'll do that again. I can know. For example, a slightly different one now where it's ace, then 2, then 5. One here. It's got a silly one. This is the one where there is 3 colors, but because I popped twice in between just nothing goes to the there is 3 colors there, just that it's not the pattern. So here's the general rule. I'm going to make 3 different packets. Therefore, I have to have 2 different cuts to make 3. One of those cuts is forced. It has to go to 3 and the 4. But the other one could have been. I'm allowed to go and put that final cut at any of the locations. 5 cards, I can put that last one any location in between my fingers. So it's n plus 1, 5 plus 1, 6 plus 1. That's why. So I'm going to show you 6 different things. But let's general. Now let's imagine I've got n cards. And then the shuffle I'm trying to get to has far different sizes. Now what I do with it will be far right. And shuffle.
Oh god damn it, why didn't you turn off?
Usually on this channel, we like talking about the past, whether it be ancient Rome, feudal Japan, the medieval period. We like forgetting about, well, the travel way back to say, classical antiquity, just to mention one, but not today. Today we're going to have the ancient Romans. But hello, number one, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metaphor speaking of what would happen if an ancient Roman could walk to our times. What would they think? They'd be amazed, angry, is there more to it? Now, this is of course it's a case of speculative history, but there are a few interesting points that I think we could touch upon very briefly. For instance, what are hypothetical consequences of an ancient Roman exposure to contemporary society, and what would be the implications of such a displacement? Let's approach this from a plethora of different points, but there are a few that are important we should talk about. Culture, military technology, technology in general, society, language, religion, geography, demographic growth, the scale of our biggest cities, transportation networks, amenities, and economy. Now I'm going to skip on economy because, to be honest, it just bores me. If you're interested, just let me know in the comments what I give you for today. We've got quite a lot of things to talk about. But before jumping on any of this, I want to talk about one specific concept. It's initial cognitive dissonance. Upon their initial arrival and exposure in the 21st century, an ancient Roman would undoubtedly experience a profound sense of cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance being the discomfort a person feels when their behavior is aligned with their values or beliefs. It is a psychological phenomenon that occurs when a person holds two contradictory beliefs, for example, at the same time. That's just one example of it. Say, for example, the monumental scale and architectural complexity of modern urban landscapes. Our modern world will represent a stark difference with what they are used to in their own world and in their own time. This goes without saying. Still, we shouldn't underestimate the powerful psychological impact and also repercussions of a radical departure from what's familiar in terms of societal paradigms and historical context. So probably if we were to organize this to minimize such an impact, I would probably take said ancient Roman before we bring it back to a historical reenactment of ancient Roman and progressively introducing to our modern world. Talking about the modern world. Starting with geography. It is my opinion that exposure to modern day geography can be confusing for an ancient Roman and would have to divide it into physical geography and political geography. Explanation of physical aspects of places that an ancient Roman would have known existed might be the easiest one to accept. At the end of the day, the ancient Rome as a civilization, when it comes to their foreign affairs and their navies, did absolutely push the boundaries of their territories, always seeking to reach faraway lands for commercial and military purposes alike. So perhaps as we are discussing the physical aspect of the world we know, I would ask the Roman two questions. Do you believe that there were more lands to discover? And how big do you think the world is? Now, when it comes to the political aspects of the world, geography that would be so confusing to an ancient Roman, and depending on where this ancient Roman comes from, is it from the Republic, is it from the Principes, the early Roman Empire, is it from the Dominants, so the late Roman Empire? I would imagine, depending where they're from, the reaction to the fragmentary state of the world. No, mostly, still, never in their life, that all territories that were once Roman, now they're not. But on a positive note, Italians now make very good use. Now let's jump into probably one of your favorite aspects, and that is the military tactics and general military tech that we have today. What would an ancient Roman be, or what we have at our disposal? The modern weapons, vehicles, communication systems would be astounding for an ancient Roman. Firearms, tanks, aircrafts, missiles, advanced naval vessels would seem almost magical compared to, say, swords, spears, siege engines, and galleys of Roman times. Now, of course, it goes without saying advanced on downplaying this once again is a given, but I think we can explore this point at scale and global reach. The sheer size and global span of modern militaries would be mind-boggling. Ancient Romans were certainly familiar with large armies, and their logistics were absolutely spectacular for the time, but the ability to deploy forces worldwide to conflict far from home be a new concept for them. Professional standing armies. While ancient Rome had a professional military, the scale and permanence of modern standing armies would be noteworthy. Tactics and strategy. Modern refined armed tactics emphasizing coordination between infantry, armor, artillery, air power, probably feel to an ancient Romans familiar with military tactics as a development on sort of basis that they gave us, and something very similar could also be said now, for example, our laws. Inclusion of women. The presence of women in any modern military roles would be a stark contrast to the all-male Roman military. This could be very surprising to an ancient Roman, but at the end of the day, perhaps the best way to help them understand the concept of combat and women is to give them an example of their own gladiatrix, so female gladiators. Basically, that's how we explain it to ancient Roman. I would tell them, hey, now you guys had gladiatrix, great. So, modern tactics and Roman understands the majority for now, sport and instance. I think this is absolutely volunteers versus conscript forces. We know that military transitions at the time from a conscript army to a professional volunteer force. They did use both systems, although in different ways, in modern nations. Therefore, not only do we deploy a manpower, but also
Were their forces also all male?
weapons of mass destruction. I think the one aspect that would be most amazing for an ancient Roman to understand is the concept of weapons of mass destruction. So let's say they can wherefore weapon is able to show them the power of atomic power. Thermonuclear warheads. If these would most likely have ancient Roman, meaning that our generals, perhaps who knows, our leaders would be godlike. That kind of weapon, it's obvious that we could, of course, wipe out completely the entire Roman military machine. Bombs from the sky look once again as divine intervention, and that sort of devastation, unthinkable even to the most veteran of soldiers. In fact, without even understand the concept of megaton range and that sort of destructive power, we would have to connect it to their military experience. We would have to connect it their mythology, camouflage. Now, of course, when we look at modern military, then we look at the way they looked, we look at the colors and the camouflage might seem that possibly some sources of techniques that we know that a certain level of color was used by the Romans. Now, you say, to red, which is the exact contrast in our opposing color to green, which is the sort of background that they would have with their forest and their grassland. I'm not talking about the military, I'm talking about naval forces, but we're told by creatives that a certain level of camouflage in at least within the Roman Italian was achieved by using shields sails on their ships. So we have to tell them by the same concepts but to our infantry. Now let's dive into religion as we expose the ancient Romans to modern religion and the way they practice with temples, shrines, churches and cathedrals. I think their reaction would very much depend on what sort of Roman they're getting. Are we resurrecting or doing or interviewing an ancient Roman from the Republic before the times of Christ? Then, for example, the exposure to that the majority of Europe, and definitely Italy for him, is Christian, would make much sense. And we would have to explain that it's basically a religion that occurred or originated in one of the provinces that, once again, depending on what we're talking about, you might not even know them. But if we are resurrecting a Roman, it's from the Christian, and is this a Christian Roman? So a Roman resurrected converted, or is this a pagan Roman? So when the Christians, but at this time the Christians are just a small sect, and he knows they are kind of somewhere in the provinces, and he has heard of some people starting to convert to Rome, specifically in the city, but he knows that they're very small religion in comparison to, for example, the traditional Roman God. So if it's the latter, so we're talking about a Roman who isn't Christian, then he's going to accept this from those small brackets. Christians actually ended up converting the entire empire, and even emperors would become Christians, like, and now no one believes in the ancient God. He would probably be very upset knowing this sort of information. But if the Roman in question is a Christian convert, and we tell him, hey, you know the Christian religion that you have accepted back in the day when it was legal to hide it? Well, guess what? Emperors will become Christians, or Italy will become Christians. And then it's going to become one of the major religions in the world, and then you tell him that massive difference because of geographic and population. I think the Roman would happy. It's like you probably see it as a prophetic confirmation of the fact that he chose right. So it would be very fascinating. Well, I would first rate one of each if I had the power and see its actions. But I'm sure that the Christian Roman would love that sort of information. But regardless of which one you choose, there are still some social political aspects in connection with religion that would still surprise the Roman regardless of his own personal beliefs. The early Roman would be interested in the dominance of monotheistic religions, which probably would sound incredible to them. The absence of Roman deities would sound strange and foreign. The global spread of religion, which of course in antiquity was spread, but not at the same rate. But I think the one that would impress the Roman would also be the separation of religions. You see, in ancient Rome, there is a strong connection between religion. So the rites, celebration, rituals, and the state, from the emperor himself, considered to be a divine successor or descending his authority coming from the gods. So the idea that today, in the majority of cases, exceptionally things, the state and religion tend to be separated, might sound very, very strange. Another reason of how religion was regardless of how we live today is the focus on personal belief rather than communal societal conduct. In other words, the emphasis on personal faith and doctrinal adherence in many modern religions would be an inevitable shift. Overall, an ancient Roman would probably find the modern religious landscape disorienting due to the fact that his religion was a state-integrated religious system, rituals of religion, continuous connection with society as a whole rather than single individuals. But they would definitely also find some areas of overlap and probably interview from those. Alright, let's touch upon languages, but only for a little bit. It's quite obvious that an ancient Roman would speak classical Latin, and that is a language that we have to reconstruct. That's not language, it's language with a deep analysis. This idea of Roman, where to speak Latin, and what the things that languages to we understand the best experts of this way to pronounce the sounds, but I already have 2 videos dedicated on my second channel, Mechatrons Academy, which is an entirely language is the common general some pictures. So I will leave links in the description. I won't dive too much into this idea of differences between classical Latin, for example, ecclesiastical Latin, but definitely a language barrier. Specialized classical language. And in fact, even if it was me, so not like a super expert of classical Latin, I would myself to advise and not recommend it. In the description for this channel. But even for someone like me, I think if I spoke to a Roman for half an hour, I would really write down so many notes. And it would be such a fascinating fashion to be like, oh, so he does pronounce the C as K like this, or he pronounces these vowels differently. Look at it, it's a lot closer. It's a lot more open as vowel network. I'll just write down all these notes, it's fascinating. What's my one? Links in the description. Society and culture. There are many things that have to do with a modern society and culture that would very much surprise the Roman folks on a very negative sense, on a positive sense. The one of the things it would be like one of the things that might be strange is the absence of slaves. Slaves are given, but so much so having a slave is seen as a positive thing. But if you have specific types of slaves, for example, Greek slaves, which were most wanted because they were expensive, it would be seen as a great show the importance of your family. That is because Greeks could genetically contribute to the smart slaves. So the idea that government, the family, responsible, pass down the man straight to see ways
貴様
of
の
even
攻撃は見切った
and how they're treated by employees fighting it back. Say, you sure about that thing? Another thing that could look different is the concept of traffic and governance proportionally would fight for individuals regardless of society, status, or gender. These may challenge some of government's deeply integrated notions of societal order. That being said,
運命の女神は
much more
こ
easily
ちら
than
に
say
微笑んだな
in the sense that democracy existed. Greeks
珍しいのを見つけたですね
existed, the Romans made it. But then again, the ancient concept of democracy and the modern concept of democracy, they don't always overlap. The same way, ancient way of our republic function and the modern way our republic functions, once again, have some areas of overlap, but they also function differently. So we have to be careful how we use these words, because the moment we say, oh yeah, this country is a democracy, this country is a constitutional republic, not what a constitution is, but it could have a completely massive misunderstanding because they might expect certain things that wouldn't exist in this sort of government systems if we don't do it. So that would be something interesting to talk about. Now, I do have a reading modern age democracies, and I'm considering making one about the differences between modern age republics if you're interested. As you know, in the comments, and if you're enjoying this video, why don't you subscribe, become a little money click.
当然だ
Amenities, contemporary conveniences and lifestyle adaptations might be something else that would surprise Roman, but I think not exactly the way most people would think. Of course, the idea of having to jump on a slow wagon and being able to drive everywhere, fly, blowing for moments of the transportation section, but in general, light, electrical power, things we needed overnight, television, sort of public entertainment spheres would be mind-blowing for a Roman. That being said, some types of amenities, some people who have studied deeply sort of amenities Romans had access to, might expect the Romans to be amazed, but it might not. So for example, if you take the Romans one of our posh houses, big residence, people who've got lots of money, and then you show them, their bathroom, they've got 4 floors. I mean, the Roman is the type of bathrooms are very small. It's because the ancient Romans did have 4 floors, and they achieved that. Tunnels and gutters that would go underneath the ground, but they would constantly going back and forth in these areas underneath the ground, so that when you walk, for example, shoes in that expensive posh Roman villa, to touch, they already have that sort of technology. And so there are some things that might not be the best about it, but lots of amenities that they will be fine with architecture. I think the concept of architecture, put in a brief bracket when it comes to art, could be very surprising.
皆さんなら楽勝です
How tall someone is, like take a Roma to Manhattan, some of these Chinese cities, and also the materials that we employ, because the Romans were already quite advanced in the civilization compared to some of the Celtic civilizations or other barbarians, because rather than using wood, which is rather characteristic of the sort of architecture that was common in other areas, for example, Germania and Italy, just to mention one, the Romans would build stone, and there was a stark difference with other civilizations. So the idea that a different futuristic civilization with these different materials would be strange for a Roman to understand. Roman would tell them, hey, the sort of materials you guys use for swords and armor, so iron and steel, but we're using to build buildings. Now our buildings are made with the same material to make swords, and that would be mind-blowing. And also this sort of skyscrapers. Again, it would be most likely to be found. And I wouldn't be surprised if a Roman had a panic attack and came out of the underground tube subway buildings. Now when it comes to art, it very much depends. Because if you show one very talented, ultra-realistic artists that are very popular on Facebook and they follow along, but yeah, people definitely recognize their ability. But then if you show them some modern art, what sort of art I'm talking about, compared to the sort of statuary that they were capable of, but please remember, statues of period are painted full color, whoever white, you wrote, what the heck is that? Like it's really another picture moment. And then showing the prices of some of these, like, here with a little color and say, hey, $1 million, you'd be like, you guys are crazy. Well, technology, personally, it comes to one aspect of like tech. It's once again one of those things that might connect us to the level of gods. Our Roman further explored the technological marvels of the modern age. It encountered a plethora of innovations. They wouldn't to verge on the level of sorcery, say the ubiquity of smartphones, computers, and internet infrastructure represent an unprecedented level of connectivity and information accessibility that might even be too complex for a Roman to understand. Imagine the idea of instantaneous communication. How would you explain that? Someone who's used to sending a letter or a package, which someone said a postal service, is not really going to understand postage, then you would have to wait months as the person just takes it out, the horse takes forever, change the horse at the near postal station. They did this. But imagine that and then tell me, look at this, message sent to each Germany. Oh, they spoke back. Transportation. The level of sophistication of ancient Roman transportation, the connectivity and communication systems when it comes to logistics, should not something to be proud of. But the moment they see what we're capable of today, to motorized vehicles, both in form, like armor and stuff, but also in everyday life, it would be something staggering for experience. Not only because of the speed and the power of these machines, that is the obvious part, but also for how much we rely on them. Ancient Roman would walk so much more than probably they would think we are incredibly lazy, and if possible,
They'd be justified in believing so, I'd say.
Just sit down too long, and then you stand up just to sit down again on one of the machines, and it takes you to whenever you guys sit down too much. And people around would think that, and good luck walking somewhere with a Roman if you get tired of you. And, well, the concept of flying would be the basis one. Helicopters would look like mythological creatures. People are scared to death. Automation could be incredible to consider with the massive container ships and port facilities that we have. However, on a negative side, consequences of our technology when it comes to the function of our cities. In fact, possible that you notice when it comes to the technology, there is something. Also, the experience of an ancient Roman would be difficult to fully speculative ideas and thoughts. And if I did forget to mention something or something that is coming right up to your head, please feel free to share it in the comments and perhaps I can make it to define this sort of speculative discussion. But in general, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you. Goodbye.
運がなかったな。行きます。
For Charisma's depression so fucking strong, we straight up avoided the preemptive attack. Amazing.
この私としたことが。手にするわ。光か闇か。これも皆さんなら楽勝です。我が道を阻むものなどない。ただいま。また出発する時まで自由行動ですね。いらっしゃい。なんじゃお主たちか。取引新製品がラインナップされたのじゃ。何を売るの？なんじゃ？何にするのじゃ？何にするのじゃ？さてさて、毎度あり。はあ、もう朝までお休みだね。どうするの？いってらっしゃい。
何か用か。どうするのだ。どうするのだ。
Right outside the United States Capitol is the headquarters of the Central Intelligence Agency. The building was completed back in 1961, but a major overhaul. Convenience and technologies are here. Internet state status of the new facility, the CIA commissioned Jim Sanford to decorate the courtyard as well as the east entrance with some artwork. Light work, first glimpse of this article appeared in front of the Washington. The background lies a large sheet of metal, perforated by multiple atoms. It's some sort of code, a secret message that, according to Samuel, had been concealed by Twist to ciphers.
At least.
Code inscribed, installed
That's a keyword.
The sculpture attracted immediate attention, so the adolescent suit against the sweepstake for some reason. But despite their best efforts, the code didn't. Being located at the heart of the agency meant the sculpture was of its color. Private indication was telling them, but it wasn't until March the following year that images of the complete installation began trickling out to the masses. It starts with 3 granite concrete constructions placed in the west entrance of the slabs featuring which would say naturally magnetic rock instead of the stone. But strings of Morse code can be found in flat sheets of copper interlaced with stone. Moving through the atrium to the courtyard, greeted by a general pond, landed a few feet in the slabs of granite. No codes or markings to speak of. Finally, we reached the main entrance. A curved screen of copper and hundreds of punched-up letters supported by a trunk of depth. The screen encircles a small fountain surrounded by 2 bubbles. There are 1,756 characters in total, which can be divided into 2 parts. The left side is the ciphertext containing the secret message. On the right side is what's known as a visionary table. The table offered a major clue how the ciphertext was being solved, because the visionary table is typically used in
他には
visionary cipher, relatively method, etc. It was like text had been coded as a visionary cipher. It works like this. We start by writing down the alphabet, so it's really the alphabet. It's basically you select a key, the letters of the word to the front of the alphabet. In Sandwich case, he used the keyword stemming from the ancient Greek. Again, into the K to the front, followed by the R, I, E, T, O, and S. This keyed alphabet is then repeated underneath the first, shifted 1 letter to the left. So it starts with the letter R, the K is moved to the end. The next alphabet is shifted once more, so it starts with Y and ends with O. This process is repeated all the way down until we end up with 26 rows and 26 columns to enter the alphabet. Alright, so that's how you construct a visionary table using the keyword. Now, the text of the sculpture is a bit different. In addition to the table, separate added 2 index rows and column composed of the standard English alphabet. These indices are sometimes added for convenience as it can simplify the encryption process. It's really necessary. Furthermore, these 4 columns at the beginning and here, so this repetition is now added to the encryption process, so they might have been added for aesthetic reasons to symmetrize the left side of the sculpture. You may also notice this rather conspicuous element to the side here. We'll get to that one later in the video. All you have to care about right now is the actual visionary table, just this part in the middle. Okay, so let's not use this table to encrypt a message. Something simple like, say, secret message. I haven't created mine at the first thing we need is the keyword. Say the keyword is hidden. Because the secret message is longer than hidden, we simply repeat the keyword until it matches the length of the plaintext above. Once that's done, now we're ready to encrypt. The first letter of the plaintext is S, so we find the one that starts with S. The first letter of the key string is H, so we find the column that starts with H. And the column intersect is the first letter in ciphertext. In this case, the letter is Q, and the second letter is E. Column that starts with I, which intersect the letter K, making K the second
登録だ
letter
な
of the ciphertext. After repeating this process for all the letter layers, we end up with ciphertext just like this. That's it. That's how you encrypt the message using a visionary cipher. Likewise, by following the steps in the books, we
別のようか
encrypt the message. But as you
で
can
はな
imagine, there's only words if keyword.
じっくり見ていくがよいぞ。
That's word. It becomes significant. It's a situation whose eight standard members found themselves in that. They were faced by this ball of cybernetics. The only person who could keep was Kim Sam. For the next decade or so,
今後ともよろしく頼むぞ。はなんだっけ。
He had said himself, let's walk like says he. But all that changed on June 8th, 1990. The computer scientist himself, in June Government, has an identified. Bill was informed
いってらっしゃい。
that he was assigned to scope solve
いらっしゃい。
the
なんじゃ、お主たちか。
solutions to fitness, just is exactly so he discovered that several elements like distinct segments could have resolved cage
なんじゃ。
a cable pressing the button
今後ともよろしく頼むぞ。
see that exalts bears
なんだっけ。
analysts David Stein repeated equipped with nothing intense on the paper minimal knowledge of archaeology Stein expanded that upon dedicated team cryptos for finally cracking this was a performance from the excellent method many months before the incident yes barely anyone sees it
なになに。
and the lessons studied that
いってらっしゃい。
and managed to solve
いらっしゃい。
equations.
またおいで。
Stein was not the first to solve late in the
よく来たな。
incidents when they came to the solutions to human beings.
どうするのだ。
Solved K1 through K3 all the way back 1992.
うん。どうするのだ。
Given at the time, efforts were making out that series of humans and documents. So let's locate them. The NSA should have solved it. Sometime in 1990, NSA intelligence were given to CIA analysts. It took a immediately interesting work done central. For a small study from practical. One subject matter is composed of 8 61 entities. There are also 4 students. The assumption made to this study was that large groups of following segments. But after a few days of trying, this assumption failed to results. One segment that seemed completely random system that would be very difficult to break and had a key. After placing a first block to code breakers, they wrote this part. About a year later, in November 1982, the CIA officially challenged the NSA to solve workers. The challenge was accepted by 4 veteran rebellionists who began it immediately. Following the previous week, they ignored the question marks and instead
登録だな。
to something known as frequency analysis. It works like this. Every language is strictly letters 1 to letters. English, the most frequent letter is E. Letters like X, Q, and Z are among these common. So even common letters like English text, say
どうするのだ。
So I can find about E's, G's, and A's, then Z's. For now, that's exactly what if this approach is it works even if the letters are scrambled. After all, we're only interested in the frequency of letters, not their positions. So even if we turn our Wikipedia sample which by rearranging the letters, we still get the exact same result, hinting that this text was originally written in English. In cryptology speak, this method of encryption is known as transposition. A transposition cipher will transpose or move characters around, but otherwise leave them unchanged. It differs from a substitution cipher, just the name suggests, can substitute or replace characters. We've already seen an example of this with the Visionaire cipher, where letters are supplanted by new ones according to a Visionaire table. This substitution of letters would often render frequency analysis far less useful, if not outright. What the NSA cryptanalysts did was to simply count all the letters in each row of the crypto ciphertext. Once they were done, they found that rows 15 through 25 produced a frequency count that strongly resembled English. Notice, for instance, how there are plenty of E's and T's, but not a single J or Z. In other words, this middle portion of cryptos had probably been encoded using a transposition cipher, while the rows above and below had probably been encoded using a substitution cipher. By this point, the NSA can assume the ciphertext had been 3 seconds and felt pretty confident this upper portion was a Vigenère cipher, as Sanborn himself had publicly stated. So the next logical step was to try and suss up the keyword. There are a few different ways to go about this, but
Try and suss out, gosh darn it.
Repeating patterns left behind by the encoding process. Remember how in a previous example the keyword hidden was repeated until it matched the length of the plaintext? Well, that repetition can reveal information about the length of the keyword. Imagine we wanted to encode the message ideal concealment of many documents using the keyword history. The resulting ciphertext would look like this. Notice how the string EAL becomes WTP. And here. Likewise, the string MENT becomes DCZR, both here and here. This only happens when there's an alignment of letters. Plain text and the key below. ENX becomes W, ENX becomes W, M becomes D, and R becomes D, and so on. In other words, identical pairings will always produce the same letter. So imagine now that we only had the ciphertext. We'd quickly notice the repetitions of the letters WTP, DCZ. We can then measure the distance between these repetitions. Okay, so there are 7 letters between the beginnings of these two, and 14 letters between the beginnings of these two. This strongly implies the length of the keyword is 7, and sure enough, the keyword history is 7 letters long. Fortunately for the NSA team, repetitions like these were indeed present in the crypto ciphertext. Take this one for instance. The beginnings of these two identical strings are separated by 8 letters. This meant the keyword was probably 8 letters long, or possibly a factor of 8. So the keyword had a length of 8, 4, 2, or 1. But 8 was still the most probable, as a 4-letter keyword below likely a bit too easy to grab. By this point, the NSA team could have just run the ciphertext through the program and checked it against all the 8-letter words in an English dictionary. But Sanborn could theoretically have used a random jumble of letters or a word of his own invention, so they opted for a different approach. First, they evened out the rows like so, and divided the ciphertext into 8-letter chunks. This way they could be certain that every 8th ciphertext letter had been deciphered using the same keyword letter. For instance, imagine that the keyword was obscured. The first letter of that keyword is O, so every 8th ciphertext letter must have been deciphered using the letter O. This means that if the same letter appears at intervals of 8 in the ciphertext, like say the letter R, here, 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 and a few more times, we have these identical pairings I mentioned before. We have R-O, R-O, R-O all the way down, which means all of these R's must represent the same letter in the plaintext. And that's the key. So, knowing that certain letters represent the same letter in the plaintext makes the cipher vulnerable to frequency analysis. After all, if all these R's represent the same, and the same is true of all the other letters in the ciphertext, we can just count all the letters. The letters with high frequency counts probably represent letters like E and T, while letters with low frequency counts probably represent letters like Q and Z. And so that's what the NSA team did. They counted a bunch of letters, tried different combinations, until eventually they found something that began to resemble English. For instance, at one point they ended up with this. Notice the words 6, 5, and 7 appear to be forming an ending. All that was left to do was guessing the letters, and just like that, the first portion of cryptos had been solved. It's a bit difficult to see when the text is lumped together like this, but if we add some spacing between the words, it becomes a lot more readable. Let's examine this plaintext now, but first we need to address this mess at the top. What the NSA team discovered was that rows 3 through 14 had been deciphered using one keyword, while the 2 uppermost rows had been deciphered using a different keyword. In other words, the crypto ciphertext was actually composed of 4 distinct segments, not 3 as initially assumed. So the portion they solved first was actually the second segment, which would later become known as K2. Alright, once K2 had been unlocked, they immediately set their sights on K3. As previously mentioned, frequency analysis indicated K3 encodings in transposition cipher, so a substitution cipher like the one used in code K2 was definitely off the table. While there are many different kinds of transposition ciphers, they often rely upon some sort of matrix. For instance, imagine we wanted to conceal the plain text, "This is a secret message." We would then pick a keyword like cloaked and write down the message in a grid matrix like so. Then we assign a number to each letter in the keyword based on their alphabetical order. So A, C, D, E, K, and O. Then we rearrange the columns in numerical order. Finally, we write down the letters in each column to generate the ciphertext. Very simple stuff. That simplicity is also the reason of cipher one, because you can sort of guess your way to a solution with a lot of patience, a bit of luck, and some know-how. And that's precisely what the NSA team did. They quickly noticed there's only one key in the entire K3 ciphertext. They also knew that plenty of English words that begin with Q followed with the U were only 5 U's. So they simply took the Q along with a few letters before and after and wrote them down as a column. And they did the same with the 5 U's and placed them next to the first column. Some of the letter combinations were problematic, like YY and HH, which would be unlikely to show up in each word. But other columns look more promising, like the HE in this pair of columns, which could be the end of the most common word of all. So they tried a few T columns, followed by some more columns, and a few more columns, and that was pretty much it. They eventually recovered the entire plaintext through nothing more than educated guesswork. In fact, the assumption that Q would be followed by a U proved to be wrong, but they still managed to find a solution. They also realized that the last 4 characters were actually part of K4 rather than K3. Alright, so that was K3 unlocked. On to K1. The reason the NSA team tackled K3 ahead of K1 is because the latter was only 63 characters long. Generally speaking, the shorter the ciphertext, the more difficult it is to break. Fortunately, the K1 ciphertext was just another engineer's step. All they had to do was repeat the steps taken to solve K2.
Is that really how you're supposed to pronounce that?
Plaintext.
I've been pronouncing Vinier wrong.
Between subtle shading and the absence of light lies the nuance of inclusion. Moving on to the K2 plaintext, it reads like this. It was totally invisible. How's that possible? They used the Earth's magnetic field, X. The information was gathered and transmitted on the group to an unknown location, X. Does Langley know about this? They should, it's buried out there somewhere. X. Who knows the exact location? Only WW. This was his last message. X. 38 degrees, 57 minutes, 6.5 seconds north. 77 degrees, 8 minutes, 44 seconds west. ID by Rose. Finally, we have the K3 plaintext, which reads as follows. Slowly, desperately slowly, the remains of passage debris that encumbered the lower part of the doorway was removed with trembling hands. Amid a tiny breach in the upper left-hand corner, then widening the hole a little, I inserted a candle and peered in. The hot air escaping from the chamber caused the flame to flicker, but presently, details of the room within emerged from the mist. X. Can you see anything, Q? So, what the hell does any of that mean? Well, something that immediately stands out is how all 3 segments include exactly one misspelled word. In K1, the first L in illusion has been replaced with a Q. In K2, the O in underground has been supplanted by a U. In K3, the word desperately is missing the third E and has had the second E substituted for an A. The prevailing belief within the cryptos community is that these typos are deliberate. They're typically perceived as some sort of clue, and Sanford has indeed implied or outright stated that that's the case on multiple occasions. Now, it could be illusion with a Q, but it's a very telling phrase as far as an artist's ability to make a code. It's a clue. It is what it is. However, Sanford has also made statements where it almost sounds like he's only pretending as though the typos were
Oh god.
Why did you put deliberate misspellings in some of the clues? That's an ancient tool for making codes more difficult to crack. Saying I was sloppy is a good way of saying it. I didn't take tremendous care in what's been deciphered already, because it was. If you want to say it's intentional, because it makes it harder. It's unpredictable. Unpredictability is one of the strengths of difficult code, and I wanted to be as unpredictable as possible. Looking at the overall meaning of the plaintext, it's, well, difficult to parse, and according to Sanford, that is very much by design. They will be able to read what I wrote, but what I wrote is a mystery itself. There's still things they have to discover once it's deciphered. There are things in there they will never discover the true meaning of. People will always say, what did he mean by that? What I wrote down were clues to a larger mystery. The K1 plaintext is very short, but seems to be alluding to shadows and how they're illusions formed by the absence of light. Light and shadow is a common theme in Sanborn's photography, so perhaps some sort of pattern will form on the scope from struck by sunlight at just the right angle, or something to that effect.
There are coding systems that choose pattern, light and shadow. It's those kinds of systems that
The K2 plaintext is a bit more straightforward by plainly stating that something was buried at these coordinates, which point to a location a few meters south of this book. But in 2013, Sanborn apparently confirmed that what he buried at this location has since been removed. According to a summary of a post-convention dinner attended by Sanborn, the item was a bronze geodetic survey marker made by the United States Geological Survey. They're typically used for things like topography and measuring the distance between locations. That being said, it sounds like the survey marker was only meant to be used. Next, after that concludes to what decipher. You have to be on the CIA grounds for this. Much like Sandborn, Shite is adamant the code is solvable. We wanted to make something that could eventually be deciphered or extracted, rather than something that will never be done, ever. But I must emphasize here that Shite doesn't actually know the solution. He's merely saying that when he and Sandborn devised a general outline for the code, the plan was to create something that could be deciphered. But it's interesting that Shite says deciphered or extracted, because there is indeed more than one way to recover the plaintext. In fact, there's good reason to believe none of the previous segments were solved in the way they were intended to be solved. Ed came after me after a briefing and said, "The solution is correct, but you didn't do it in the way I intended you to do it." Remember, the NSA solved K1 through K3 not by finding the keywords, but instead by exploiting certain patterns and weaknesses in the ciphers. The same is true of the methods employed by David Stein and Jim Galogly. To use an analogy, they hotwired the car instead of finding the keys. So the question is, how are we supposed to find those keys? I will say that I have left instructions in the earlier text that refer to later text. Let's start with K2. Alright, so through cryptanalysis, the NSA team deduced the keyword of K2 had a probable length of 8, and this was confirmed once they successfully extracted a plaintext. At this stage, there are a few different ways to reveal the actual keyword. A really neat way of doing it is to truncate the visionaire table so that the number of rows matches the length of the keyword. In this case, the keyword has a length of 8, so we only need the first 8 rows, and not counting the first one, which will act as an index. Then we simply offset each row, or alphabet, according to the plaintext, like this. The first letter of the plaintext is I, while the first letter of the ciphertext is V. So we slide the first row until the V is in the I column. The second letter pair is T, F, so we slide the second row until the F is in the T column. Once we've done that for each of the 8 rows, the 8-letter keyword, abscissa, is spelled out vertically in the first column. The word abscissa is a mathematical term that typically refers to the x-coordinate of a point in a 2-dimensional graph. So, graph, point, coordinates, abscissa. It's unclear how this relates to cryptos, but some believe it's a metaphor for the treasure hunting idiom, X marks the spot. I like to be enigmatic, and I love metaphor. You know, is that the process of finding letters in the visionaire table sort of resembles points in a graph where the abscissa and coordinate are the columns and rows. Anyway, once the keyword was known, people started looking for ways to recover abscissa without first knowing the plaintext. After a lot of searching, came up with a plausible theory. Remember those granite and copper plate constructions by the west entrance inscribed with Morse code? Well, if you didn't, now you do, and here's the translation.
うん、どうするのだ。
There are a few immediate takeaways. The second I in digital has been swapped for an E, and the next line is likely meant to say interpretation, but the code is cut off so the final N is missing and the O ends up looking like a T. Digital interpretation could mean there's some sort of digital component to solving cryptos, which is consistent with a comment made by Sam. As a visual artist, I like to design systems that include visual as well as digital material that can be deciphered by machines. T is your position could mean a lot of things. According to some cryptos enthusiasts, someone once told them that Morse code actually continues underneath the block of granite. So the full sentence could be something like, what is your position? Virtually invisible is similar to the first line of K2, while the shadow forces is reminiscent of K1. As for lucid memory, RQ, SOS, and the 27 seemingly superfluous E's, knows. Alright, so that's what the Morse code says. Now back to the keyword search. If we take the last 4 letters of virtually and the first 4 letters of invisible and use Ali Invi as a keyword for K2, we find the word abscissa spelled out right here. The reason this works is because the sequence Ali Invi also appears in the K2 plaintext in the phrase totally invisible. We're basically using part of the plaintext to reveal the keyword, instead of using the keyword to reveal the plaintext. In fact, this works with any 8-letter sequence of the plaintext as long as it's offset at intervals of 8. So if we use the first 8-letter sequence, it was taught, we'll get abscissa here. If we use the next 8-letter sequence, Ali Invi, get abscissa here. Using the third sequence, Siebel How, get abscissa here, and so on. Presuming this was intentional, Sanborn didn't just happen to use two similar phrases without realizing one could accidentally expose the keyword of the other. It's still unclear how we were supposed to know to rearrange part of the Morse code to read Ali Invi as opposed to any other sequence of letters. Another option is to take this one E at the end of virtually and move it to the front, then make it with the 6 E's at the beginning of the next line and append invisible. Plugging that in as a keyword will also produce abscissa because the first 8 letters act as padding to ensure Ali Invi falls into place. In fact, we can use any 8 letters before Ali Invi and it works just the same. But again, it's unclear how someone was supposed to deduce that those specific letters had to be organized in that specific way. Sure, Sanborn might have expected us to simply guess by trying different Morse code fragments and successively pretending that were letters. There's even a cryptographic term for this technique, which is crib dragging. But it would still be nice to have at least one solution that relied exclusively on clues and deductive reasoning rather than tedious guesswork. As far as I can tell, Sanborn has never confirmed whether abscissa was supposed to be acquired in this way, but it's the least convoluted theory for the time being. Moving on to K1, he suspected that it was 10. Sure enough, if we modify the missionaire table like before, we find the 10-letter keyword palimpsest spelled out vertically in the first column. A palimpsest is a reused manuscript document. If you erased the text from the page of a book and wrote new text in its place, that's a palimpsest. It's a word that fits the theme of footnotes in multiple ways, not least of all because the curved colored screen resembles the scroll or the flowing page of a book. Another interesting find is that the combined letters of palimpsest and abscissa can be used to construct the anagram. P.S. It's as simple as ABC.
どうするのだ
Anyway, unlike the keyword for K2, no one really knows how palimpsest was supposed to be found. The only half-decent theory seems to be one that relies on palindromes within the Morse code, which is when a sequence of letters reads the same forwards and backwards. The idea is to take some of these palindromes while ignoring others, and to then stack them in a particular order to form the word palimpsest. But the process feels very contrived, so I'm not going to go into detail here. You can check out the references if you want to know. Moving on to K3, things get a bit tricky because there's more than one way to recover the plaintext. The easiest one is so simple, it's almost laughable. All you have to do is count every 192nd character. That's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 192. The first letter is S. 1, 2, 3, 4, 144, 145. If we reach the end, we just loop back around and keep going. 146, 147, 148, 191, 192. The second letter is N. Keep going like that and you'll recover the entire K3 plaintext. There are a bunch of other decryption methods I can explore here, including one that quite convincingly utilizes the keyword cryptos. But there is one method that's not just theory, but actually has some evidence behind it. In 2013, Sanborn released this encoding chart, which he used to encode the K3 plaintext. It's very low resolution, but notice what looks like an arrow in the lower left-hand corner. For many cryptos enthusiasts, this all but confirmed what they had long suspected, namely that the K3 ciphertext had been generated by simply rotating the plaintext. It works like this. First, we write down the K3 plaintext in a 42 by 8 grid. That's 42 characters per row across 8 rows. We then rotate the text 90 degrees clockwise. Using this new orientation, we write down the characters row by row in a 14 by 24 grid. You'll notice the text now matches the encoding chart, and all we have to do to generate the K3 ciphertext is rotate the text once more. There you go. The encoding chart even has the word end written in the corner here of the end of the ciphertext. But there is one problem with this approach. It leaves out the question mark at the very end of K3. Notice how it's not included in coding chart. This has led many to suspect that this final question mark is actually the beginning of K4 rather than the end of K3. Now, an argument against that is that the source text of K3, Jimotto.com, does end with a question, and it would of course make a lot more sense for a question mark to follow a sentence rather than the beginning of it. Sandwood has repeatedly refused to answer whether it belongs to K3, K4, has confirmed that it's nothing more than a question mark. Presuming it does belong to K4, the fact that question mark appears at the beginning might be a clue that K4 is written in reverse. Speaking of question marks, remember that inscrutable final sentence of K2? Ever since K2 was first deciphered back in 1992, the phrase ID by Rose, or possibly ID by X, has been a complete mystery. But in late 2005, a cryptos enthusiast by the name of Leaf was crypt-cracking different keywords from K2, she noticed something odd. If you move the first A of abscissa to the end and plug that in as a keyword, the last sentence of K2 becomes player 2. It wasn't given much attention at the time because, well, discoveries like these are not that uncommon. Shifting letters around and trying different keywords is bound to generate original text that just so happens to be legible. But this time it was different because half a year later, Sandwood informed the cryptos community that he'd made a mistake by omitting an S between this E and W in the end of the K2 ciphertext. If we add that S back in, the final sentence no longer reads ID by Rose, but X layer 2. Something that immediately comes to mind is that a palimpsest is a document with 2 layers of text. Anyway, the fact that this mission still produced something was pure chance. That it's why it took Sandwood 16 years to detect his mistake. He apparently assumed ID by Rose was some sort of cryptographic jargon and didn't realize there was something wrong with the actual code. This does of course raise the rather concerning possibility that the reason K4 hasn't been solved is because it too contains some sort of mistake that Sandwood has missed. You know, I've done my best to distance myself actually from notes, and when K1 through K3 were cracked, I had to go back to my notes to figure out what it means. And it's the same with K4 as well. When it's cracked, if it's cracked in my lifetime, I'm certainly going to have to refresh my memory as far as what I wrote. It's a bit concerning. In a subsequent interview, Sandwood said he was pretty sure K4 is fairly accurate.
Because if there's a mistake in K4, and I don't know if he's worked backwards for that yet.
No, that's fairly accurate.
You sure about that, Jim?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure about that one.
A few years later, Sandwood said in yet another interview that he'd completely forgotten the K4 plaintext once again. If somebody tried to torture me, I couldn't tell them. I haven't looked at the plaintext of K4 in a long time, and I don't have a very good memory, so I don't really know what it says. So whether Sandwood has actually gone back and double-checked the intended steps for solving K4 remains unknown, and the possibility of a mistake can't be completely ruled out. So that being said, K2 was deciphered in spite of a mistake, so even if K4 contained a similar typo, it wouldn't necessarily be rendered unsolvable. Another reason to be optimistic about the solvability of K4 is the fact that Sandwood has gotten increasingly impatient for someone to solve it. I'm getting tired of the continued and somewhat escalating number of people contacting me and saying that they have cracked the code. I assume the code will be cracked in a fairly short time. I can't do this for many more decades, okay? I'm 65 now. So, to nudge the process along, Sandwood finally caved and offered a clue in late 2010. The clue was a fragment of the K4 plaintext, specifically the word Berlin, located here. So K4 can somehow be decoded such that the letters NYPVTT are supplanted by the word Berlin. Not only that, but Sandwood released the encoding charts he used to create K1 and K2, which supposedly contain some sort of revelatory information. All that's really been gleaned from these charts so far is that the inclusion typo in K1 was the result of changing the first S in palimpsest to a C. Meanwhile, the K2 chart does not include the undergrouped typo. This could mean inclusion was deliberate while undergrouped is not. Just as it could, not mean that even though Sandwood stated he wouldn't offer another clue until 2020, he apparently changed his mind and disclosed the second clue only 4 years later. This time it was the word clock, located right next to the previous clue. So this portion of the K4 ciphertext can somehow be decoded into Berlin clock. The clock in question is probably this one. It displays the time using a series of red and yellow lights and is indeed located in Berlin. But its relevance to cryptos remains a mystery. 6 years later, in early 2020, Sample disclosed yet another clue. This time it was the word of East, located here. Less than a year later, in the midst of the pandemic, Sample released its latest clue. It was the word East. Even though nearly one quarter of the K4 text has now been disclosed, the final segment is undeciphered. Something I've heard about cryptos over the past few months is that everything you can think of has already been tried. I mean, not literally, of course, but that's certainly what it feels like. There were so many times through my research where I had an idea for how it might have been done, only to find that someone already tried that some 20-odd years ago. I mean, we're talking thousands of people trying every conceivable permutation of every conceivable cipher for over 30 years. It's especially impressive considering Sample is not a photographer and, at his own admission, is bad at math.
What I like to refer to myself as an anathemath, which means I am afraid of mathematics. I do not have math skills. I was taught physics, but only baby physics. I was taught math in summer school because I didn't have math in high school. So basically, there are other ways to make codes rather than using algorithms that they underlie existence.
Instead, he's an artist with a background in archaeology. Somehow managed to create a code that withstood billions upon billions of fracking attempts and even stumped the NSA. On the other hand, the fact that cryptos was made by a non-expert does not require it.
Where the hell is my drop?
All more likely for a living person to solve it. If anything, a creative and artistically minded amateur may actually have a better chance of solving K4 by thinking outside the box in a way that computer algorithms and professional cryptanalysts may struggle to do. The interesting thing is I tried to minimize the need for math. If someone had math, then hey, that's an avenue for that person. But sometimes, this sounds bad, you can know too much and listen. One of the leading hypotheses entertained by the NSA back in the 90s was that K4 had been deciphered not just once, but multiple times over. The idea is that Sample took the K4 plain text and ran it through a Visionaire cipher like the one used to encode K1 and K2. Then he took the resulting ciphertext and ran that through a transposition cipher like the one used in code K3. This second layer of ciphertext is then called sculpture. According to Edward Shines, the plan for K4 was to somehow conceal the English language to curb the use of frequency analysis, which, as we now know, was instrumental in solving the previous 3 segments. You can only guess what exactly that means, but cipher stacking would be a simple and effective way to mask the language of the plaintext and disrupt the use of frequency analysis. Another proposed solution is to use what's known as the Hill cipher. Reasoning behind this one is tied to that conspicuous L in the Visionaire table mentioned at the beginning of the video. While many believe that L is merely an oversight, others believe it's a deliberate clue, as its inclusion means the word Hill can be spelled out vertically the side here. Others believe the solution has something to do with the letters DYAHR at the beginning of K3, which have this odd spacing that makes them stand out from the rest of the code. Possible anagram for these letters is the word Hydra, but whether that's meaningful is, of course, anyone's guess. As you can imagine, there are hundreds of theories, and out of sheer desperation, many turn to scrutinizing everything Sample and Shite has ever said in the hopes of narrowing down the list. Exhibit A, this video. But that is perhaps not such a good idea. I seem to like to manipulate the information coming out in a sort of disinformation fashion, which seems appropriate for the project. And so a lot of the clues that I might give work in a sort of disinformational way. That's a good thing. I mean, that's the clandestine ethos. So you might even be giving me some disinformation right now. It's possible, yes. Although, not even the fact that he can't be trusted because somebody said the complete opposite in other interviews. It's not my intent to put up disinformation. I'm a benevolent cryptographer. Disinformation and dubious benevolence aside, Sample has taken steps to ensure the solution to K4 isn't lost to time. It will either be put up for auction or passed on to someone else in the event of his death. So one way or another, we will hopefully get that answer at some point in the future. Who knows, maybe one of you watching this video right now be the one to break the unbreakable.
No, lol.
These 97 or so characters are all that stand between you and history. Everyone will Q&A. We're talking videos, talk shows, podcasts, conferences, the whole circus. Centuries from now, students will be bored out of their minds as they read that one chapter of the history of cryptography that bears your name. All you need to do is throw some symbols into a blender and you'll become evil. Forever be remembered to defeat the American intelligence community at their
い
own
らっしゃい。
the genius who solved
なんだ
cryptos.
お主たち
No one
か。
else could. Then when you finally do solve it, we can all look back at things like this one off of that moment. We'll be astonished by it as we go. So what are you still doing here? Go and solve the damn thing.
computer encryption slash decryption and protection and stuff are things that absolutely go against my philosophy as a human being and an artist in general. So I have intentionally and quite actually am very bad at that subject. Don't tell that to my teacher in cryptography right now. I'm supposed to still be learning more other various subjects from him. Or her. Or them. Or attack helicopter. Is that really still funny? Do people still think that's funny? Okay, yeah, it is strength-based. Alright, good to know. Just needed to get that clarified.
装備を変えるのかよ。なんじゃ？
Okay.
「家事をするんじゃどうするのじゃ？装備を変えるのかよ」
「
何にするのじゃ？装備を変えるのかや？
だな。
装備を変えるのかや？何にするのじゃ？何にするのじゃ？なんじゃ？さてさて、何の御用かの？毎度あり。はあ、なんだっけ？なんだっけ？どこにしまったかな。さて、じっくり何を売るのじゃ？どうするのじゃ？何を売るのじゃ？取引成立なんじゃ？今後ともよろしく頼むぞ。はいはい。朝までお休みだね。なになに？